Next up, our good friend, John Willis. We've been seeing John, I think, a lot all over the globe. John has been traveling the globe himself. I think he's, I don't know if he's back from Barcelona, but he was certainly enjoying himself over in Europe last week or in the last couple of days, and I see him live here. So we're going to...
Hey, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mediterranean cruise. Yep, just got back late last night. So
when do we get that?
That's what the next user conference is going to be.
Was that part of the speaker get back?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was. Hey.
All right, we're going to have to make a little bit of a shift here, John. I'm going to switch to my machine because we've been going through Derek's.
All right, I'm going to just screen share and bring up my deck. So
hold on. You muted now?
There. I got it.
There.
You got it?
And,
all right, John. Let me get you in focus here. You can hear me okay, John?
I'm good. Are my slides good to go?
Yeah, you're set. Welcome back. You sound relaxed.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll definitely be taking a nap after this one. No, great. It's always fun here. Welcome everybody, and So I want to talk about the integration at the end here. I wanted to go through kind of the introduction to DevSecOps, kind of my style, but I've been really working with Derek and Mark quite closely now, almost a year now, and it's just been a great collaboration. So a lot of stuff that I'll be sharing with you actually seems like we kind of learn circular from each other. They learn something, I learn it from them, I learn something. Anyway, so let me begin. I'm John Willis, Botch Loop on Twitter. I also work for SJ Technologies, but I'm not going to bore you with my long kind of background and all that stuff. I'm easy to find, but I do want to bore you with a little bit of shameless plugs here for a minute. I am a co-author. Actually, I looked up the other day. I've actually authored 10 books. About 6 of them were many years ago, or 7 of them, but IBM Red books. But over the last 3 or 4 years, DevOps Handbook, which has been a lot of fun, and then more recently, an audio-only project that's probably one of the top 3 or 4 projects I've ever worked on in my life. Me and Gene Kim did a follow-on audio-only, only 1 credit on Audible. It's called Beyond the Felonious project. It's really been a lot of fun. So yeah, I don't think you can talk about DevSecOps without having a little bit of discussion about DevOps, but I'm not going to bore you or steal a whole bunch of time on what is DevOps, given that there are 4 gazillion people on the planet doing that every 10 seconds. But I did want to actually at least set the framing for what we're talking about here, the thing I wanted to say also, there's this kind of notion. It was a statement that started early in cloud, and I'll say it in DevOps, and I'll actually say it's going to say the same thing in DevSecOps, which is you ask 10 people what the definition of DevOps is, or now DevSecOps, and you'll get 10 different answers. The one thing about the answers from DevOps is I say, here's the kicker, they're all correct. One of the beauties of DevOps has always been that, and really this is a tribute to Patrick Dubois, who really is kind of the founder of the movement, that there never was a pure definition, almost on purpose. It was an emergent, a beauty, really. And so the beauty of DevOps is there wasn't a canonical definition. But you could also say the curse is that there isn't a canonical definition, right? Because then people get frustrated because they can't look on a page and have, a 3-sentence statement. But if we wanted to look at, one of kind of the purest primitives, if you will, I love that, purest primitives. Write that down, John. It is the automated deploy line, the pipeline, CI/CD, whatever we want to call this. And we get this actually, if you go from Wikipedia, if you go all the way back to Jez Humble, Chris Reed, and Dan North gave this as a presentation in 2006, right? Like that still blows my mind, right? 2006. And this concept of how you, in my words, you create these gates, right? And this is what we think about as a shift left, right? Like somebody in the software delivery team, a developer, part of the team, check something in, they go through a gate, they hit a red, they go back, they fix it, gate, red, go back, right? And this creates this resilience over time and speed. It really is one of the cornerstones of what makes this idea of an automated pipeline possible, that you do this over time, you build resilience, you create things. Mary Poppendieck's famous quote is, how long does it take to get one line of code through your system, right? And, I think, Google, from an infrastructure side, there's no question that this is a place, if you like to geek out, is a place to geek out. And these are numbers. This is probably about 4 years old. And then, but here's the kicker, right? 2016, and I've been told it's way higher than this. 150 million automated tests run daily. So I think somebody said it's actually, I was at a conference recently and someone from Google, I showed this slide and they shouted out, it's double, right? So I don't know. I don't have a confirm on that, but imagine 200 million plus automated tests run daily, right? Like this is what this happens. And if you look at we go back to Toyota, right? That's what you got from, why Toyota was so successful, really. It was this kind of notion of an andon core. You could build resilience into it, right? And, so anyway, if you look at DevOps, the quickest kind of DevOps summary here before we get into DevSecOps, if you look at the Agile movement, it changed the game in terms of thinking about things from months to days, or, 6 months to kind of days to deliver. But the last mile was DevOps, which basically included operations. But here's the kicker right now. Security is as we transition from 2018, 2019, you're seeing all this focus on DevSecOps, because really it is kind of that bottleneck, right? So, Josh Corman, a good friend of, of this community, the rugged community, he makes this quote, he modifies or thinks about Mark Andreessen's "software is eating the world" quote, and he looks at it as software is infecting the world. And clearly I agree. And so what that means, particularly when we talk about open source, right, and all the open source that we're using, which is very positive, right? The things that we can do today, the abstractions. I joke that when a dope like me can run deep learning TensorFlow stuff on a Google Cloud, right, the world has pretty much gone haywire in terms of abstraction. Sorry. But some numbers, so you've probably seen some of the phenomenal work that's been done in the supply chain report by Sonatype. But I went out and I looked. I wanted to kind of confirm some of those numbers on my own, right? And the modules.com, right? You got 1.5 million Java modules per week being downloaded. The Node 5 million modules per week. 31 billion modules. This half of this comes from module, some of this comes from the software supply chain report. 31 billion modules, and I'm sure this is updated now, per year. 230 modules per enterprise per year. 8% of those are known vulnerabilities, and it's on average 8 million costs to remediate a breach, right? So we're using software, and the node numbers are off the chart, right? 5 million per week. This came out about a month ago. I got to put Dynaroot. These people are really bad at choosing names, but this is less than a month old, right? And here's the thing that blew my mind on this. This is a DHC client for all Red Hat products, basically. And if you notice here, it's one minor change. It's a 2-character change. This was a nasty exploit in a DHC client that basically was in every Red Hat. And all the change was a -R. So if it isn't scaring you, if the former couple of slides that I showed you didn't scare you, this should scare the hell out of you, right? It's basically, no-opping an escape character, which basically command injection is one of the more dangerous attack vectors these days, right? That just blew my mind when I saw this one, right? In CV 2018-111. I joked now, once somebody should have never showed me Shodan, right? Because now for kicks and giggles, after I put my kids to bed, right? And my kids are old now, but I actually go see if any of my friends are running exposed Jenkins servers, right? Across the world, what the heck, right? I got nothing better to do. That we probably kicked the dog out of this Equifax breach, but I think the meta here on this thing is. It was, if you were paying attention on 3.6 in 2017, you probably should have had a clue that this was bad mojo. Again, there could be a million reasons why it didn't actually get, discovered until July, and then actually kind of announced to the public in September. I mean, if I looked at the anatomy of the Equifax breach, right, which what's even crazy is not only was the CVE created on 3.10, so discovered on 3.6, announced on 3.9, but Oracle drops a whole ton of their quarterly patches. Again, not to beat up on Oracle either. And guess what it includes in April? It includes this same breach, right? So not only, so the intertwinings of what we have to deal with is insane, right? So even if Equifax had been kind of, or had, kind of hygiene such that they would have caught this before July, they would have just actually been infested with an Oracle quarterly patch, right? So, if you're really in weird like me, the really fun stuff today is going to read SEC and reports. There's a famous Knight Capital, that they went out of business. They lost $420 million or $450 million, something like that, in 45 minutes, when that business 24 hours. It's like a fascinating SEC report. There's actually, I haven't found yet the SEC report for Equifax, but this is the lawsuit against the CEO. It is fascinating reading. Again, I won't waste too much time here, but it actually gives some pretty good insight into what happened. Actually, this guy, Jin Young, actually did insider trading once he knew. So not only were there so much kind of chaos going on there in terms of how they were trying to figure out what they figured out, they're basically their CIO was basically kind of making it worse. And then you contrast it, and I know that you're going to hear from Fannie Mae a little later today, and I think maybe yesterday as well, but the same breach that Equifax saw, they actually discovered on the 9th, they, through their kind of risk mechanism profile, and then the team there, which is very heavily focused on, and if you want to see some great presentations, our DevSecOps at RSA, Chichalango gave an amazing presentation about their kind of DevSecOps hygiene. They put a war room together that evening, that when they got the risk notification, they went ahead and had full remediation within a couple of days, right? They literally just found every URL, and they basically drove the exploit to a curl script with a curl, right? And wherever they broke through, they knew that was an opportunity for mediation. And then this has probably been talked to. All I'm trying to do is, I'm giving the shorter version. I have 30 minutes this morning. I've given longer versions of this. Spring Boot early this year discovers, not Spring Boot, sorry, Spring, Pivotal or Spring, right? Another command injection. So this is big, right? Like, it's hitting you every, you got Red Hat with the Dynaroot, you got this in Spring. I mean, like, if you think you're hiding or not, you're kind of immune from this stuff, you're not, right? So the world has changed. I have a longer discussion about, what I consider the new Goldilocks zone for security. I think in the old days, last year, old days are condensed these days. Old days is 5 years ago. You basically, I think most of the notion of how we protected from security was basically perimeter security, right? We fortified the walls. We spent tons of money on the walls. We spent very little on the inner perimeter. And, and the world has changed. Applications have changed significantly. You look at the last bolded highlight there, last 10 years is more of, you go back 10, 15 years, most traffic was north-south, right? And, today most of your traffic is east-west. So like if you're sitting on the perimeter, there's two main problems. One, most of the traffic is going, I think I saw something that Facebook was like 97% east-west traffic, total network traffic, east-west, going kind of between racks. The thing is that's one point that you're missing most of the traffic. Second is the bad guys get in. They get in because they tailgate into your building. They just get in. There's lots of non-technology reasons why people get in your building. And once they're in, that perimeter stuff is really not going to do them a whole lot of help. So there's this kind of notion that I started thinking about. In DevOps early days, we said things like, you build it, you run it, right? It was actually Werner Wargels, CTO of Amazon, who kind of gave that original quote. And, as we start thinking about in 2018, we need to just include this into the you build it, right? Like whoever builds it not only needs to own it, needs to run it. We talked about in DevOps, the running was you own the operationalization of it. And what happens was operations became the guardrails, to use some, American baseball metaphor, the people who set up the field, set up the lines, make sure the grass is cut, all that stuff, and then the players get to play. That's the idea here is that operations and QA, they're not out of the game. They're actually very important to make sure the game is played correctly. And what we're kind of thinking about, and I think, back to earlier when I said there is no canonical definition of DevOps, and I don't think there'll be a canonical definition of DevSecOps. But I think in my mind, if you're going to ask me what it means that we need to include security in the same way we included operations and QA into this kind of you build it. Security needs to be part of the guardrails, the meta, the automation, all the things that help the players play. And the players are the people who build the service. Now, whether the security people are rolling up their sleeves and help building, which is the best possible scenario, or they're the people that just make sure all the things happen the right way when they're delivering the service through the pipeline, right? So now we have this kind of notion of what we had earlier in that the DevSecOps as the supply chain. So all we're asking now is, let's make sure that all the things we did from operationalization and QA that we did to ensure that software was delivered and things were caught early and they could be corrected and we could create that resilience. We just want the security meta automation, the gates, to be in as far left as possible. And every time we find something on the right-hand side, we move it earlier into the left-hand side. This is we've working with the company SJ Technologies that I work with. We're 8A, women-owned, minority-owned, and we work with some of the large defense contract, the defense business, the public sector, if you will. And this is one that we had worked on, which is implementing basically in a secure environment. And I got to give a shout out to DJ Shellen because he's the one that blew my mind in RSA 2017, where I saw him give a presentation like this, and it got us really excited. And we were able to kind of take those ideas to one of the large kind of public sector, I'll say. I can't say what agency it is, but and to really just throw the kitchen sink at this process. So anyway, and so here's kind of a more a botchical loop version of this, if you will. If you think about the delivery chain in DevOps, right? And you can, people break this up into different buckets. So I don't think the names of the buckets matter as much, but you have kind of a delivery level, you have the version control level, build, test, release, maybe stage prod, right? And so like let's say that, if, in 2018, I get asked to visit a lot of companies. I visit a lot of companies. This is one of the things I love about my job today is that I just visit companies. I spend a day with them or 2 days. And by the way, that's an open offer. I just, if you're doing something interesting, I come out, I'll do a lunch and learn, I'll do an executive briefing. The only thing I ask on my side is that I get to sit and talk to your people in different groups, because that's where I get my juice from. But anyway, so if I got asked to go to a company and you say, oh, John, come look at our DevOps scenario, right? And, not DevSecOps, look at my DevOps. And I came in and you said, yeah, we got Eclipse and it's pretty cool. We got plugins, developers love it. But that version control and build stuff, it's for the birds. Who needs it? Just gets in our way. In fact, that build, it annoys all our developers by sending them red error messages all the time. But we use Selenium for, behavior driven, and we're rocking, and we love Ansible. And again, by the way, I just picked I picked the easiest to cut and paste icon. So these are not recommendations of products. And then I'd say, well, I'd look at them like, well, scratch my head and say, yeah, I kind of missing a few things, right? Like, because I'd expect you to have everything in every bucket, right? Kind of this, how can you shift left if there aren't things in the next bucket left, right? And, and I think as we're going in 2018, I mean, the momentum has been insane this year. This is really the year of DevSecOps. I think I would have the same thing. I'm like, you have to fill in all the buckets, right? And again, we're at Nexus Conference. I mean, right now, Nexus Firewall, Lifecycle, these are important the products that I see over and over. They're integral to part of to this DevSecOps story. Again, you'll hear that from much more qualified people than me today and probably yesterday, although I was on a cruise yesterday, so I couldn't listen in. But yeah, I mean, again, other than the Nexus products, right? Because I do like them a lot, and I love working with Derek and Mark. But other than that, I literally just picked some products. I mean, TwistLock's a good product. I mean, I just wanted you to have the notion that every bucket needs to be filled, because in DevSecOps, so the abstraction now is we've complete abstraction of everything we needed to do a service. James Wickett, good friend of DevSecOps, basically says, that a bug is a bug is a bug, right? I love that quote. Like, it's not that you have you treat like security as a different type of animal than just your kind of what you would think is a classic software bug, right? I've given this longer presentation of a hacker, and I just want to say that, the hackers, they're bad dudes, man. They're bad people. Shannon Leitz will give you, she sounds like she's speaking later today. Anything she says, you should listen because she just knows her shit really, really good. And the one thing I love about what she talks about is how bad the adversaries are and how clever they are. And you've got to be on your game, be dealing with them, And we met a hacker at the Chicago company, basically bragged about how, 4 out of the 5 last breaches he got in by just somebody holding the door open for him. So go back to, again, the Goldilocks zone has to be the supply chain. We have to get our hygiene right on how we deliver our software and constantly shift left and make sure that that we're batting down the hatches on the, how we deliver software. I had recently a friend of mine was doing this hackathon. He was a big corporation doing a hackathon for a bunch of colleges, and they were trying to figure out kind of a tripwire thing, how to detect something that got changed in alert. And I'm like, that's great, but let's figure out why are they there in the first place to even get to that thing, right? Again, I think this idea of fortifying the delivery of your software from as far left as you can. I love the story Derek and Mark were telling earlier about, even doing it in design, right? So in the end,
John, I'm going to jump in and give you a 5-minute warning. Okay.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks, Mark. So I mean, just kind of putting it all together, you want to go as far left with kind of training, security requirements, again, that story about the company doing it, UX, threat modeling, architecture review. Fannie Mae has some great stories how they set up their own GitHub project where they actually have their own versions of the correct code for the OWASP top 10, and then they add any new ones that they catch. Make sure your plugins, your IntelliJ and Eclipse have security plugins. To fail to build, or make sure you're tracking and auditing the things in the build. Configuration. Again, I think TwistLock is an interesting product because they'll tell you, people say, well, containers, oh my God, they're so dangerous. Oh, and but on the flip side, if you look at Twistlock and you see all that, just read their reference documentation. You'll say, oh, these are all things I could actually control, and you could actually make containers more secure than VMs, in my opinion. Gartner is doing some good work here. I'm going to shout out to kind of Gartner on their kind of DevSecOps work. Pretty good. I got to give a shout out to Gene on this. Gene covered this mostly in the DevOps handbook, although we had 4 authors, but Gene kind of wrote the security section. But it's pretty spelled out in the DevOps handbook. Train developer teams develop secure code. Track security issues in the same system that you do your software bugs. Think about things as security as code. The pipeline, right? And then, if you start getting advanced, things about like kind of Chaos Monkey or failure injection. And I said at the end, I wanted to kind of point out on the, the June 27th. So we got we have the DevOps Enterprise Summit, IT Revolution in London on the 26th and the 25th. On that Wednesday, we're going to run a DevSecOps workshop. Basically, we're going to build a kill chain. It's going to be awesome. So, like, if you've never done security before, come on, because we're going to give you Lecture Cloud. We're going to have the Nexus firewall lifecycle all built with a running Java application that will actually have the Equifax Strut 2 vulnerability in it. We'll give you a Metasploit, and if none of this means anything, that's cool. But come, you'll learn what it means. We're going to give you a Metasploit container, and we're going to let you actually attack an unlocked down Jenkins and take control of a system. You'll be doing this in the lab. We'll also basically you'll get to use kind of Lecture Cloud. And you'll see this, today's integration day. You'll see this, really cool integration between Lecture Cloud as a delivery mechanism with all the bells and whistles. We'll have GUIs. You'll be able to create some GUIs. You'll see Nexus firewall and lifecycle as a way, so the first step, you're going to basically breach the system. And then we're going to shift left. And at some point, you're going to start using the Nexus tools to basically identify that and stop and break the build, right? And then kind of remediate. And it should be a lot of fun. I mean, if you're geeky like this, and again, the really important point is you don't actually have to be a security expert. And if less than half the things I said don't come, if only half the things I said don't make sense, come on, have fun. And actually, the next day we're running a DevSecOps Days event. So anyway, that's all I got, Mark.
That was great. Thanks. It's exciting. I'm excited to see you in London because what you just put up there for the kill chain example, that is just tremendous. So we're looking at your screen now, John, if you want to stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, I should do that before you see all the emails I got while I was on the cruise.
That's okay. But no, I'm excited. We've got, as you said, Chris Roberts is going to meet us in London, too.
That's right. We're going to have him on.
So it's going to be a good day. Derek, I see you're in here. Any comments?
I'm always taking notes during John's presentations because, he got me hooked about a month ago on the normalization of deviance. And if you don't know what that is, maybe I'll put a link into Slack on the YouTube thing. You should watch 15 minutes on that. You'll be talking to all your friends, not even in DevOps, about that.
Get to use big words every once in a while and sound really smart, right?
John's always making me smarter.
Oh, geez.
And the just how bad the adversaries are. I was in London a couple of weeks ago. Daniel Cuthbert from Banco Santander was presenting, and he was saying, if you're a really good hacker, you are 8 hours away from hacking into anything that you want. So if you think about just how on top of security you need to be, how important it is that if you're rolling out new security fixes or whatever, trying to beat the hackers, like your time window is about 8 hours. If you've got an important site.
And Derek, I still 30 seconds. So on the cruise, I met this guy who lives in the middle of Washington by the Columbia River. He's been a network guy his whole life. He's built his own data center of about 400 GPUs because apparently wherever this is by Columbia is the cheapest place to get electricity, right, to do crypto mining. But here's the kicker. That town and the state have basically stopped allowing people to get electricity. So all these places that even people want to be good guys to use crypto mining, the municipalities are basically cutting them off on power. So, and we both know that we've found over the last year or so, the worst adversaries are stealing compute time from you to get cryptocurrency. And even the good guys are actually getting forced maybe to be bad guys because you can't get power anywhere. So like the bad guys are stealing time on your big time computers to get crypto because they can't even get the power anywhere else.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to jump out of here, guys, because I'm setting up the success channel. John, always good to see you.
All right, guys, take care. All right, bye-bye.